Okay, I think we're live. Guys, sorry, YouTube changed some stuff up on me, and I have no idea if we're live or not.
Yeah, we're still figuring out, but thanks for joining us. We've got Brad Scott, Christopher Keeler, Gene C, Stacy Paolo.
I think we just went live now.
Oh, great.
I don't know. Okay, start over. Sorry, guys, YouTube issues.
Yeah, we just, we're kind of figuring out the new YouTube studio system. But thank you guys for hanging in there. We've got SV, Sailing Someday, Darla, Steve.
Hey, what's up, guys?
We got Brad Scott, two people who always make our live streams awesome. We've got Jessica Kinsmay, One Drum, missed it too fast. One Dumb Marine, Alan Davis, Brian Doolittle, nice name. Party Playlist, Mike D. Got lots of people in the house today. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we finally have internet after a really long time of not having reliable, good internet. So we thought we would do what we love, which is catching up with you guys and kind of talking about our experience over the last month and a half / 2 months. So yeah, we were in Cuba, and one of the reasons we wanted to go there was because it's a little bit difficult to cruise the southern coast, and even a lot of Cuba, for a lot of reasons which we'll talk about. But our philosophy was kind of, it's because it's so difficult, it'll probably be really worth it and really amazing. So why don't you talk about what you think about it so far, and then we'll move on to questions and just hanging out.
Yeah, just have a fun hour of Cuba. Hora de Cuba,
nice.
As they say in Cuba.
Nice.
All right, so yeah, we just wanted to say that our experience in Cuba was, I guess you would call it like polarized. So we had some really, really fun times, and there was some things about Cuba that we liked a lot, and then we experienced the opposite as well. What I liked about it was how remote the South Coast is, particularly some parts of the South Coast. You can roll up on like perfect blue, crystal clear water, amazing beach, a couple of like park wardens that live on an island with like a aquifer and a well, so they've got drinking water, and I mean it's just like you can have everything that you want, like that whole like ideal cruising experience. Not a lot of boats, basically no tourists, and that's available in the Caribbean, which is something that I thought you had to go to the South Pacific to experience, because most of the Caribbean anymore, if you've got something that beautiful and that perfect, you're going to have some sort of tourist operation set up taking advantage of, that pristine place. And so Cuba, because of its geopolitical situation, it just doesn't have the thriving tourism that most of the countries within the Caribbean have. And so there's just not so many tourists and not so just access to that kind of stuff. So.
And we're both really into freediving and kind of getting to know the reef systems all over the world. Once we started making freediving a priority in our cruising lifestyle, we've noticed that each reef has its own like personality and characteristics, and things that are thriving and things that are kind of dying. So it's been interesting for us to see the reef in all these different locations. So Cuba's at different parts of the places that we visited in Cuba, where a lot of those tour boats weren't going to, were pretty awesome. There was a lot of living coral. There's a lot bigger fish, so that was really cool. And then on top of that, a really awesome added perk was whenever we'd show up to these outposts with Cuban rangers taking care of the island and making sure everything's going smoothly in these little outposts, they would come up to our boat immediately and have like huge lobsters and fish and coconuts, and they're always ready to trade. So that was a really cool aspect of cruising Cuba. However,
yeah, well, and the funny thing is they were always willing to trade, and their favorite thing was a bottle of rum.
Yeah.
And luckily we bought like a case. We bought 12 bottles of Cuban rum at $5 a bottle, US dollars a bottle. And so we had 12 of these things, and we would trade one bottle of rum for like, 6 huge lobster tails or like a couple of fish, I mean, a $5 bottle of rum went a long way out there in the middle of nowhere.
Kind of crazy.
Real quick, I got to give a shout out to my niece, Mackenzie.
Oh,
She
hey,
says,
Mackenzie.
Hola, tia and tio. Very good.
Cool, that's awesome.
Nice Espanol.
Nice. Also wanted to say thank you so much for your super chat, Patrick Cote, and I don't think I'm saying that right. Is it Cote? And we just got another one from SV Spirit Libre. Glad to see you guys back with a live stream. If you are still looking for a mask, let me know. The marina has a stockpile of them. Awesome.
Rock on. And cheers for our first super chats of the day.
Cheers. I have my one last bottle of wine, so I'm going to decide if I'm going to drink any of it. Yeah. So I'm going to cheers with water for now.
And real quick, cheers to someone I've been chatting with a lot, Rusty Comer. What's up, Rusty? How are you, man?
What's up, Rusty?
Okay, so now for the what was kind of rough about Cuba. Do you want to start? It was probably harder on you than it was. By the way, someone's saying it's hard to hear you.
Oh, it's probably...
I put it closer to you, but try to speak almost as loud as I do.
Is that any better? Yeah, a lot of times Jordan will be expressing something that he's really excited about, and I'm like, oh my God, you're yelling.
Yeah.
Like, please, just...
The energy gets too high.
So yeah, basically, I really found the southern coast, its remoteness, very enchanting and cool. But I started seeing the kind of logistical difficulties started kind of to taint that enjoyment for me personally, because I'm in charge of feeding us and provisioning. And so basically between where we checked into Cuba and where we checked out of Cuba, there was one place that we could go grocery shopping inland, and we decided not to go grocery shopping there because we had heard that there was large-scale food shortages throughout a lot of Cuba due to the recent economic changes and sanctions on trade and everything. And so our friends who did go to town, they were only able to get like sweet potatoes, peppers, and like a cone of ice cream.
Yeah. Well, and we should also mention like how few places you can go ashore on the south coast of Cuba. And the whole thing behind that is they don't want like average Cuban people having access to boats, because I think there's a pretty thriving industry that like ferries Cubans out of Cuba, right? Mm-hmm. Because they want to get out of the whole communist system. And the Cuban government isn't very down for that, right? Like, they don't want that happening at all. Because I think if they allowed it, it would happen in huge amounts. Mm-hmm. And so normal Cuban people aren't allowed even near boats.
They're not allowed on the boat.
Well, they're not allowed on boats, but they're not allowed even in, like, harbors.
Right.
So, like, all harbors are, like, kind of sanctioned off, like, cordoned off, kind of like a port would be. Mm-hmm. Like, an average person can't go into a port in the States, like a commercial port. Same thing, but for all boats. Mm-hmm. And so you're only allowed to go ashore where you're on like a remote island where normal Cubans can't access it, or in like designated marina areas,
which are like purposefully removed from the rest of society.
Right.
So in a way, it's kind of like you're cruising back in time, because they're using buildings that were created in like the 50s and 60s, and there's no other businesses happening there, and so there's no reason to like further develop or improve. And so there's these like outdated kind of bizarre structures with like one or two people living there full time to just interact with cruisers essentially and help them on the DL get some like tomatoes or eggs. Or like, hey, I got your laundry. You got some laundry?
Yeah. One of the places we went had all-inclusive resorts, Cayo Largo. And they had all-inclusive resorts on the island. And so we met someone who basically, like, they obviously started a business of like doing things underground or like in the black market for cruisers. So laundry was one of them. She would get your laundry to the laundry facility that took care of the laundry from the all-inclusive resorts. Mm-hmm. And so it's totally not allowed because they just don't have a functioning method for you to do that,
Right.
And so we had to work with this woman to get all like fresh water. We had to buy bottled water from her. We had to get laundry done through her.
So essentially, because I was in charge of provisioning and keeping us well fed, the one place that we could have stopped and like gone into an actual town where like actual Cubans live and hang out and buy groceries, we didn't do that. And we had heard that people who did do that, they were experiencing the shortages, so even they weren't able to get groceries. So we basically didn't provision for a month and a half. So it was a great learning experience. We ended up with like 4 onions and like 1 little piece of cabbage. And Jordan slaughtered a lot of fish.
Yeah, we did do really well with spearfishing.
Yeah.
Which it was kind of like out of necessity, so that was actually kind of a cool thing,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't just for fun.
Exactly.
Like, we needed it.
We got to the reef and I was like, you go back in there and you get us dinner. So yeah, that kind of started weighing on me, and I like being in remote areas, but I also was really struggling with the lack of freedom and the lack of feeling like I could go anywhere and interact with normal people, not just people who like work in marinas or work at these outposts. So by the time we came to the Cayman Islands to essentially catch up on videos and do a couple live streams and catch up on welcoming our new patrons. If you guys are new patrons, welcome. But this has been the first time that we could like walk on land amongst, normal citizens and go wherever we want, and it's just been a real kind of crazy, almost culture shock for me. So towards the end, it was really getting to me. So yeah, I there's the good and the bad. That was kind of our overall. Let's really quickly just want to think. We've got Hans. Oh boy, Devoso. Cheers.
Hans Devoso. Cheers, amigo.
Thank you. And then we've got Wanda Marine. Awesome. Thank you very much. And then Larry Summer says, hello from chilly, rainy New England. Hello.
Cheers, Wanda Marine and
Cheers.
Larry Summer. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
So Rusty Comer asks, are the majority of native Cubans that you've encountered welcoming to you?
Oh, yeah.
And like the answer is just yes. Like the crazy thing is that there is zero animosity towards Americans among the Cuban people, which is a little surprising because as much as we can rag on like the system of communism, and it definitely, like, a visit there will show you, it'll give you like a real appreciation for capitalism. Let's just put it that way. You know what I mean? Like, you walk away from there being like, yeah, we got some good stuff going on. But at the same time, it's very hard to like really distinguish where the line is between communism being the cause to a lot of these problems and the U.S. embargo being the cause to a lot of these problems. And the U.S. embargo is a huge reason why a lot of the issues in Cuba are happening, because their economy is just hamstringed by it. And so I'm amazed personally at the complete lack of animosity towards Americans because of that. Because, I mean, imagine if it was the other way around, right? Like, imagine if the United States was in this, terrible economic depression, and you could, like, point the finger at, like, Brazil, right? Like, and say, it's because of Brazil that it's, like, everything is going wrong. We would probably have some animosity towards Brazilians, but not in Cuba. So I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah, and then we had a couple of Facebook questions about Cuba that I wanted to get to. So basically, if you have any questions about cruising Cuba, let's get through those. Let's see. Don Scott James says, my main question I have is the legality and process for U.S. citizens to enter and cruise there, including spending money. As I've heard, you have to use cash, but that puts you at risk. I would think as robbery target. What does it take and how difficult is it? So let's just talk about the money thing. Essentially, you can, if you go into a bank, you can exchange U.S. dollars for the kook, which is the currency that the Cuban government uses for all tourists. And so the Cuban
but it's
citizens,
an actual separate currency.
Right. And then the Cubans have different prices for everything. And they use the peso, which is, for example, they could get dinner for $1, and then we'd get the same dinner for like $10, or 1 kook versus 10 kooks. And so as an American, you just can't withdraw from an ATM.
Well, as an American, it's not so much as American, but if the only credit cards or debit cards that you have are from American banks, then yeah, you have to have all the cash that you're going to have with you when you get there. But from a safety standpoint, I don't think we've ever felt safer than when we were in Cuba. And it's specifically because, in my opinion, crime doesn't come from places that are like relatively poor. Crime comes from places that have huge wealth disparities. And so in an area where you have really wealthy people and really poor people in the same area, that's where crime's going to be a problem.
Right.
Cuba doesn't have that.
Well, there's some places like Cienfuegos and Havana.
The cities, the big cities.
And then Cienfuegos being a port town, we've heard that there's a couple of dinghy thefts there, inevitably. But as long as you tie up your dinghy, should be fine.
Yeah, totally.
And then...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
As far as the legality of going to Cuba, I think it's been updated.
We can't really speak on that.
Right.
It's changed a lot.
Yeah, it has changed a lot, but essentially, you used to be able to apply for a 2-week kind of like, not a visa, but like a 2-week permission to be able to go there legally on a boat. And that might have changed since then, but I would definitely check out the Facebook group Cuba Land and Sea for more information on this. The Addison Chan spells out all the information. He has a really cool digital cruising guide, which we use like a Bible there. So it's really easy to read. It's free. So that's where you want to go for all the updated legalities of cruising in Cuba information. And what's cool about that, because it's an electronic app, he updates it all the time. So that's going to be real time.
Okay, I got to give a quick shout out to my buddy Brett Johnson. Says, I'm looking fit. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. It's all for you, man. And then also Dizzle, Tyler Murphy, is in the house.
Hi, Dizzle.
What's up, buddy?
And Wild Bill. Let's see. We already thanked Rusty Comer, right?
We did, but there's a great question here. It was Kevin Anderson says, any scary moments? And I was thinking the pin to the dock.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to start that story at least?
We got pinned to the dock twice. Which one do you want to talk about?
Yeah, right.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, this is going to make a really good episode when we get there, but long story short, when we got pinned, or when we checked into Cabo San Antonio on the western tip of Cuba, that's where we checked into the country, and there's where you have to check in, you have to go to a dock that is a breakwater, right? So it's totally exposed to the east, except for the west side of this dock. And that's just an uncomfortable situation to be in, period. Well, we got there, and it was a total calm. It was like a prefrontal calm, and we were meant to have a calm all night. And so we docked on the east side of this dock, and it seemed like it was going to be okay. There was like 4 boats docked there, so we felt like it was going to be fine.
And also, it was the night we arrived. We were really tired.
Yeah, we were exhausted.
The marina owner, who's not supposed to, offered to help us get some dinner. Ended up being a super cool meal. And so by then, it was like 11:30, and we talked to some fishermen. They said the winds weren't going to get too big because they just received a weather update, so we went to bed.
Yeah, the fishermen were like, yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
We went to bed, and then like after having been underway for 4 days, we got like an hour or 2 of sleep, and then the winds started picking up out of the east, and it wasn't super crazy. It was like the frog boiling in the water scenario. Like the winds just started to pick up slowly, and it wasn't very strong, but because the dock is just a concrete wall. And so the chop that was coming was just kind of hitting us against this concrete thing, and then the chop would bounce against the seawall and kind of hit us the other way. So we would get this kind of wild motion going on. And before we knew it, the wind was starting to pick up, to the point where Atticus was really every now and then like getting tossed at the seawall. And we had some fenders out, but it was just getting to that point where like, whoa, like if a fender were to pop out, we would just do damage. But at that point, we were pinned to the dock. It was difficult to come away. And like, long story short, like everyone in that vicinity got woken up. It was like midnight, and like helped these, was it 3 boats?
Yeah.
Yeah, us and then 2 other boats get off of that dock. And it was just totally like crazy and terrifying that Atticus could get in such a, precarious situations so quickly and easily.
Yeah.
Like I said, it wasn't even super windy, but it was just the fact that there was nothing between us and all of this chop.
And that video will be coming out in like 2 weeks, so you can see the whole thing
Yeah.
happen then. And then it happened again.
On the other side of the dock, with
and
a squall line
for a
that came
stupid
through.
reason, and you'll just have to watch the video for that one.
And that one was like
That was
really sketchy.
Yeah.
That one was like, we barely got like away with the boat still intact, kind of sketchy, you know, like,
Yeah.
oh man. And we were like motoring away, and this squall line was just like super strong and kind of came out of nowhere. And I had like the engine was just full throttle, and we're just getting pushed down by the. Oh, okay, you'll have to watch it.
Oh yeah, and then I
It
hurt
got
myself.
crazy.
That was crazy.
Yeah, Desiree hit her leg on something and had this like golf
I didn't even
ball.
notice, and then once things calmed down, I looked at my leg, and I had this like huge bulging protrusion
Yeah.
on my shin. And I was like, oh my
Yeah,
god!
and we had like to motor like for an hour to get to a protected anchorage in just this super crazy conditions.
Yeah.
That was
So
just
the
insane.
lesson we learned there was, and it's kind of one of our new philosophies, is do what's hard, which is, you know, when you're on watch and you think you should bring the sail down, but you're tired, just bring the sail down. If you're at a dock and you think the winds might pick up and it sucks and you're tired, just get off the dock.
Or like if you're in a comfortable anchorage, but it looks like the wind might shift and you're exhausted, and the next anchorage is like 50 miles away, it's like, just do what's hard, because by being lazy like that, that's how we've been, the only times that we've been really concerned about Atticus and her making it through it or not has been when we didn't do what was hard. And it sounds like a really simple thing, but when I mean hard, I mean it's like hard, like you're exhausted and you need sleep, and now you're going out to sea. Good luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cabo Rico 06 asks, what's the entrance process, i.e. do you have to just notify port authorities, and what paperwork is involved? It's pretty much very similar to entering into most countries. You radio the port captain on the radio, and then you check in. And luckily, at the place that we checked in, we had the medic, we had the customs guy, we had the agriculture guy, and the vet all come on board all at once. And basically, every time we check into a country, we just need our registration, copies of our passport, and our crew lists. And that pretty much gets us through every country. So it wasn't much different from normal.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was different in any way, maybe except for the fact that it's more convenient than a lot of countries.
Yeah, because they come to your boat.
Because they come to you.
Yeah. And then William Edgerton says, I would like to see you play your guitar on the boat sometime.
Oh, I better start practicing.
Yeah. And then we got a couple of super chats. Joe Kujowski. God, I'm so bad at pronouncing these names. He said, great to see you live. Cheers, Joe. And then Eric Blackburn
Cheers,
says,
Joe.
We have a Hunter 295 and have learned so much watching you two. Oh, cool. We have been to Cuba. Awesome. It's a great place to visit. Yeah, did you guys go to Cuba on your boat? And which areas did you travel to? And what did you like the best? And what were your experiences like there? Let's see. And then William Egerton says, have dinner on me. Aw, thank you so
Cheers,
much.
William. Appreciate
Cheers.
it.
That's awesome.
And we will use that because
Yeah.
we're here in Grand Cayman, in the Cayman Islands, and dinner is not cheap here. Like, it's so crazy how you can sail from Cuba to here, and it is the polar opposite in every way.
Yeah.
You know, like, everything's expensive. It's a education in, you know, the difference between communism and capitalism.
Yeah. And then Rusty Comer says, again, thank you very much. He says, apply it to some more fenders and medical supplies. Thank you. Actually, that is on our list. We need to get one more fender. We had 3 at one point. Now we're down to 2.
Yeah.
And one more would really help us sleep at night. So
And
thank you.
Thayer Bigelow says, love your spirit. Cheers, Thayer.
Thank you. Cool.
And then Shannon Dardar.
Oh,
Cheers,
Shannon. Awesome.
Gracias.
Cheers.
And then Stacy DePaulo says,
Nice.
in Cuba, were you able to use little shit, or did you have to keep little shit out of the water? We were able to use little shit everywhere that we went. I think the only place on the south coast that you can't is No, Cienfuegos you can too. The thing is where you can take little shit. So you can have it in the water. You can, cruise out to the reef with it. You can go from one spot to another within the marina facility. But, a lot of the time they won't let you go outside of the marina facility unless you're out in the islands, which most of the time in the south coast of Cuba you are. And so going from island to island with little shit isn't a problem either. So we didn't experience any restrictions in that regard.
And then John Souders says, good info. Thanks. Cheers to you.
Cheers, John. All right.
I missed some, I thought. There's one more from Lon Pribble. Thank you very much. Cheers to you. I think I'm going to switch to at least one glass of wine.
Yeah. And then David Daly. Cheers, David.
Cheers.
All right. Cool. I think we're up. So,
and then Lon Pribble says, how did you get water?
That's a great question.
Do you filter drinking water? What are your water maker plans? Awesome.
Well, I'll say it first thing, water maker plan. Can I have a little bit of rum first?
Sure.
Getting this stream up and running was stressful.
He's like, I'm gonna need a glass with some rum in it.
I had it on lockdown, like I have totally figured it out, and then YouTube just changed a lot on me and didn't really let me know. So cheers, guys. If any of you guys have a drink, cheers. Okay, so
water.
Our water maker plans are in our upcoming refit. That's going to be one of our major projects because it is such a bummer having water be like the main limiting factor in your cruising experience. In our cruising experience. And it was that in Cuba, big time, because we couldn't go ashore anywhere. We had to only fill up in these certain places where we could go ashore. So there was one point in our trip where we traveled, was it 40 miles out of our way?
Well, 30 there and 30 back, so
yeah,
60.
60 miles totally out of the way just to get water. And
when we got there, it looked like that the water pressure wasn't going to be enough to work.
Well, yeah, there wasn't enough pressure to go through our filter. So, Lon, that was your other question. Do you filter your water? And yes, we put it through a 0.5 micron, I believe it's a carbon block filter, but it's just one of those 10-inch standard filter housings that you can get at Home Depot. It's too hard to get.
Cool.
But it's just a standard one you can buy on Amazon. And the 0.5 micron does a really good job with most bacteria. We've never, had a problem that we know of.
I think it's cool how you rigged it up, too. You added some fittings and some water hose.
Yeah, and we just make sure that we have a certain length of hose because we find ourselves, generally more or less about 6 feet away from the spigot when we're in little shit. So I've kind of rigged it so that we can, fill our jerry jugs and keep them in the dinghy. But anyway, in Cuba, it was a huge problem. Yeah. So we can go about 10 days, 12 days, probably 12 if we were really skimping.
That's including drinking water, cooking water, showering water.
Yeah, which the showering becomes less and less.
Yeah.
Well, it just becomes salt water, really,
right.
If we're really being skimpy.
And then our hands start peeling.
Yeah, that's true because you're sailing a lot, so like you're getting calluses, and then all that salt water, like your hands look like you have leprosy. But
it's very attractive.
Yeah, but that was a big problem in Cuba. In the rest of the Caribbean, you don't have that problem. So I don't think anybody needs a water maker to cruise. It's just really will help you extend your remote cruising capabilities. And Cuba is basically all a remote cruising experience unless you're just marina hopping. We must have passed probably 8 different towns that we could have gotten water in, but we couldn't go there.
Yeah.
And so it was just so frustrating.
I think we were getting spoiled. Like, the rest of the Western Caribbean has been super easy as far as getting water. It's either free and accessible or like super cheap. So it was kind of like a reminder how dependent we are on finding fresh water. that's one of our limiting factors.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure if I thanked David Daly, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss you. So cheers to you.
I thought we did, but
You did?
cheers,
Okay,
Dave.
cool.
Captain Fish says, buy a rum maker instead. I like it. I like it.
And then Eric Blackburn says, here's some cash to get a bottle of 7 rum. It's excellent. Oh, is that the 7 years añejo rum? That is the good stuff.
That is the good stuff.
We usually don't buy that because it's too expensive.
I'm drinking the Tres Años, the 3 year. And this is the $5 bottle of rum that you can get like 7 lobster tails for. And in fact, somebody just asked...
and Nick Garcia, cheers.
All right. Okay, Nick Garcia, cheers, amigo.
And
Garth
then,
C. Oh, boy.
Oh, and David
Stephen
George.
Shared.
David George from earlier.
Elizabeth Miller.
Whoa,
Hey,
whoa,
Elizabeth. Man. Cheers.
You guys are awesome.
And then Dave Anderson said, thank you for sharing your adventure with us. You got that already, right? And did you get David George?
Yes.
And
yes.
David George.
And then Kevin Anderson was asking, what's your water capacity? And it's about...
Right now, it's a hard question to answer because...
And, yeah, explain why.
Well, because it's such a ridiculous thing. We ended up installing new water tanks onto Atticus, like not designed at all, because the designed water tank is in with the ballast in the keel, and that's a project that we've got to tackle to revive that thing. And so I don't know how much of the tanks that we installed actually fill, because they're not perfectly installed. They're kind of at a weird angle. So I think that our capacity
it's like 20 below, probably.
Yeah, it's about 20 and then 15. So somewhere around 40 gallons. And then we have our 5-gallon shower. So 35 to 40 for like drinking and then 5 for showering, which is just not a lot.
Right.
And so yeah, that's another big reason why we want to get a water maker, because we just can't take on much water. Our friends that we were cruising with, that you'll meet in some upcoming episodes on Sailing Vessel Wavelength, they've got, gosh, was it 100-gallon capacity, maybe more?
Right.
And so if you've got that kind of capacity, then you can really, how would you put it, like you're cameling it, right? Like you fill up, you've got a ton, and then you just kind of let that, ride that for the next couple weeks.
And I will say, like, Cuba taught us a lot, and we were sailing a lot, trying to make easterly progress. And so I learned a lot sailing wise. I learned a lot like conservation wise and provisioning and cooking wise. So it was a great learning experience, and we had some really awesome moments.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be too much of a downer.
Well, and so speaking of which, Fireworks Family says, are you allowed to lobster dive in Cuba? Technically, I think no. I think it's a blanket no, like in the entire country, because so this is one of those things where it's like it's not easy to find these things out, right? Like
and we even asked the port captains every place we went to, and they all said yes. They said if it's just for you for your dinner, then yes.
Which makes you think, like when you hear that, right? It's like as long as it's just for you, it's okay. It's like, so that means it's illegal. And you won't, but you're cool with it. You know what I mean? The point is that Cuba, because it's communist, they don't have like a thriving, domestic fishing, recreational fishing industry, right? Like there's no such thing. Like there's people that fish for food for their family, but there's no sporting style fishing within the country of Cuba.
Well,
now there's a huge tourism industry for fishing, but that's mostly catch and release. A lot of it is, at least. So the point is they don't have that kind of infrastructure where they have a Department of Fish and Game that has regulations for people who are doing recreational fishing.
Right.
So instead, they're just no, it's all illegal. And then you get there, and then you talk to the port captain or the official in the area, and you say, hey, can we spearfish? Can we get lobster? And they're like, yeah, as long as you're just taking one or two for yourselves, then it's fine.
When we checked into the country, we showed them our spear gun, and we said, can we use this? And they said, yeah, it should be fine.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where you saw that it was illegal.
It's just the sense I got.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even see, I have no idea.
Sounds like it would be illegal.
It just, their whole demeanor about it, you know what I mean? Because if it was legal, right, they'd be like, you can, but here are the rules.
Right.
But they'd be like, yeah, go for it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and so that doesn't exactly sound like it's a regulated thing.
Yeah, and we learned some new lobstering techniques when we were in Key West. We learned from our first fisherman friend Shane Leonard, Captain Shane Leonard, and he took us out lobstering and spearfishing for the first time, and we saw some like badass free divers just go see a lobster and like grab it with their hands, and we'd be like, so you can just go down, find a lobster, and grab it like,
with your hand.
With your hand, like you don't need any tools. That's crazy. And so we were initially like tickling for lobster, where you stick a pole over the top of them and behind them, so it tickles their little butt, and then they sprint out. They're like, "What are you doing?" And then you cover the hole with a net, and that's how we used to catch lobster. But we learned a new technique of just like seeing a lobster and being like, "I want that one."
Yeah.
Just grabbing
Which this will be in the upcoming episodes too. But there's this one, like I caught 2 or 3 lobster just with my, not bare hands. We got
good gloves.
In fact, somebody got it from us.
Yeah,
it was on our wish list.
it was. Thank you. You personally fed us for like at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it was what's the material? The Kevlar, like they're for like people who use knives a lot, you know, and they can't get cut through. And so went down, and there was one point where there was a big lobster under some, you know, rock formations, and it had, the hole he was in had like 3 or 4 different exits. So, you know, I didn't want to just go in there because the lobster would just run out of one of the other holes. And so I went down to one hole, and I told Desiree, like, go to the other hole. So she went down that hole and started, like, kind of messing with it, you know, sticking the tickler in there and stuff. And so he, like, went out my way, and I literally just, like, grabbed him. And he's, like, freaking out. He's in my hand, and he's this
huge.
Big. He was like a 2-hand lobster. Like, I got him with one hand, but not well. Grabbed him with the other, and I'm, like, swimming him back up to the surface.
Yeah.
So it was, like, again, you know, like, we got spoiled there because we would need food. We'd, like, drop the hook at a reef and hop in and get 5 fish, you know, in an hour.
Warp 21 Drive says, was the fish and lobster more abundant than some of the more overfished areas you have cruised? And I would say yes. Like, once we found the places for spearfishing, we had a lot of luck finding, like, just the perfect size eating fish.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
Real quick, shout out to my buddy Josh Davis.
Hey, Josh.
Says, you're my hero, Coop. You're my hero, Josh. You are my hero.
Also, the next big thing says, thank you for the birthday video back in March. See you when you get here in Florida. Thank you, Nathan. You guys are awesome, and we look forward to catching up with you. And thank you for all of your generous offers about, you know, getting hooked up in Fort Lauderdale. We'll definitely be in touch soon.
Yeah. And then Mackenzie Weber has a really sweet message. Says, here with my husband taking notes. We've been pinching pennies to save up and sailing off.
Cool.
Watching Atticus has kept us hungry.
Aww.
Good. We've started watching religiously, and you guys mean so much to us. Thank you. Well, thank you, Mackenzie. That's
sweet.
really, really nice to hear that we're able to spark the excitement.
That's
you know?
awesome. You're better people than we were, because I remember when we were in our refit and I would see people like cruising, I would just get like so envious. I'd be like, oh, why am I still here?
Yeah.
So you're a better person than me. Robert Miller says, please use this to buy some better rum. And then Safety First says, tu bandera, party, party. Nice. Your flag, party, party. And then we got a couple more. Ben Theory. Wow, that's amazing. From Canada. You're awesome. Cheers to you. Oh, did you mean to do that twice? If not, we can refund you one. And then Keith Lemley. Entertaining, educational, and fun. Truly enjoy following your adventures. Awesome. Thank you so much. Hugh Van Dyne. Welcome back.
Hey, cheers, Hugh.
He says, by the way, have you figured out where you're doing your refit yet?
Well, we can go into this in a little more detail a little later, but I mean, the short answer is we're thinking it'll be in Oriental in North Carolina, but that's by no means certain. We've got a couple of offers with different people that we've met through the channel on the East Coast to like go to different marinas and stuff, so it's still pretty up in the air. But as of right now, my favorite boat yard that we've kind of done research on is one of the two in Oriental North Carolina.
And then Ron Jersky says, can you give a brief refit punch list? And we are actually working on our, we're going to spend 2 days, our next 2 days off, just honing in on exactly what projects we want to do and then prioritize them. So we'll have a better answer in about a week.
Yeah. And I mean, I can say that, the majority of the issues are rig related, with a few exceptions, like the River of Love. We want to fix that, and that, if for those of you that don't know what the River of Love is, it's a handful of sources that we've got salt water leaking into the boat when we're heeled over a lot, and we got to fix that, because living like hard on the wind, heeled over at 25 degrees is hard enough, but having to go down below and walk ankle deep in water.
It's like when
makes it even worse.
You're a kid and you're trying to stay out of the lava, there's actually water.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an example of, and that's a hull to deck joint issue, and we got to rebed some of our chain plates, and so let me put it this way. All of the things that we're going to be dealing with in the refit have to do with keeping Atticus unstoppable. Because what I've learned, the biggest thing I've learned from our couple years cruising now, is you can fix just about anything on your boat if you can get the boat to a place where you can get things shipped in to some sort of a boating hub, right? So if you can get the boat to the right kind of location, then you can fix anything. The point is, can you get the boat to that location no matter what? And so we're basically going to be, we've identified a handful of weak points in both the rig, in the engine, fuel system, several different things. And I just want to make sure that nothing stops the boat.
Yeah, essentially when we left the United States, what we equipped the boat with was based on a lot of reading and research and theoretical ideas we had about cruising, and we spent the last 2.5-3 years actually cruising and kind of figuring out what we'd like to do to the boat. So now I think we're gonna nail it.
Yeah.
And I really we were talking to Sailing Uma a couple weeks ago about where to do our refit, and you had a really good analogy about what was that? I just loved that.
Yeah, with regard to our upcoming refit, I've realized that when it comes to working on your boat, in a lot of ways, if you put a lot of work into your boat, it's sort of like you've got a bomb in your hand, and that bomb has a fuse that's lit. And every time that you work on your boat, you splice on a longer length of fuse. But that fuse is going to get burned up, and eventually you're going to have to splice on more fuse. And that helps us a lot, because we kind of used to think, as I think a lot of new cruisers do, that you put the work in and now you're good. This is somehow gonna last a long time, and that's just not really the case. All you're doing is adding a little bit more fuse to the bomb.
I'm gonna ask one question from Mario Rodriguez, and then we got a bunch of super chats to thank. Mario asks Jordan, "Do you speak Spanish? A year in Isla Mujeres in Central America, and now in Cuba."
Okay, so I feel like I picked up the whole cruising thing pretty well. I didn't know I wasn't a very handy person. I didn't know about engines when we first bought the boat. I didn't know a lot about plumbing or electricity or anything, and I did pretty well with that. I suck at languages. I'm just realizing that. It's so funny. I've had all the opportunity in the world to get a lot better at Spanish, and I can get by, but it's I can get by just about as well as I could maybe a year and a half ago. I kind of, once I could survive, and not go hungry or die in a Spanish speaking country, then I kind of stopped progressing. So tenses, not really my thing,
That's funny. I think you surprise me when sometimes he'll come back to the boat and be like, "I just said this. Does that make any sense?" And it's usually 90% good. So good job, bud.
Yeah.
Claude Dan Ellerby, he says, "Hey guys, take a shot for me." Awesome. Thank you so much. Jordan, of course. Oh, darn it. I'm using your glass.
It's okay. I can drink straight out of the bottle.
Jack Taylor says, "Enjoy yourselves, kids." That's awesome, and we will. Well, at least we'll try to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Someone asked, in fact, my dad forwarded this to me, so let me know who sent this. How are your backs? Is yoga helping? And we did get a comment with that recent episode saying that we're too young to have back problems. I don't know about that, actually. We're not that young anymore.
Well, also, I think we started having back problems once we transitioned to working on computers a lot. And the way that Atticus is set up is not ergonomic at all. Like our bench is like a 90-degree. There's like it's at a 90-degree angle. It's padded, but it's not. There's no lumbar support. And so we'll have to show you guys one day when we're both working on our computers. We actually alternate sitting and standing, and then we have all of our books, and we try to make it like in line with our eyes, and try to have our.
When she says we have all of our books, what she's saying is we take all the books out of our bookshelf, which is a lot, and then use them to stack like our computer up to our eye level, and then I've got my standing desk, so I stack books onto our companionway stairs, and then put like a piece of wood down so I can like have my hands at the appropriate level. I stack books at the bridge deck so that my computer can be at my eye level. Yeah. It's so ghetto. Yeah. It's the funniest thing. Like I think we're gonna film an episode here in the Caymans about like us both like running this whole shebang inside Atticus. Yeah. You know, and like right now we're in one of those periods where we're editing for like 2 to 3 weeks straight, and so we just finished our first week. We're in the middle of our second week, and like it's just 2 buds, 2 computers, and like one tiny little cabin all day.
Yeah, and like we both can't move because everything's plugged in and like just precariously positioned. You know, so I'm like, okay, I gotta go to the bathroom. He's like, okay, hold on.
Yeah. But Christopher Keeler says sitting is the new smoking. It sucks. Oh. Dude, that's so true, man. Like it's amazing. So once we start having back problems, I think it's because we went from jobs where we didn't ever sit, right? The super yachts, and then charter boats in Key West.
Yeah, you're not sitting there in those jobs.
We were just constantly moving, and then fiberglassing and sewing. Yeah. You know.
And then I would say, not ironically, it makes sense with what we're saying, but our backs get better when we're actually cruising.
Right.
And so it's only when we like kind of settle down and try to like catch up on videos that we both start getting problems. But as far as yoga, it has been helping a lot. We've both been doing it, trying to do it every day in the morning and in the afternoon sometimes. And what we want to do is either this go around on our refit, or at the very least our next upgrade. We want to really, really focus on designing 2 desks that are like perfectly ergonomic so that we can kind of nip that in the bud.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't want to whine too much. We're actually making it work really well. Yeah. Now that we've put a lot of like time and effort and thought into it, like even though it's super janky with like the books and stuff, like we've actually got it down where like we're both fairly comfortable, and our back problems are more or less gone. Right. We both are just more sensitive to feeling like, ooh boy, like today it's getting a little rough. Like I better like stand a little bit more, or you know, do some stretching. And I do yoga every morning now because my back was worse, and it was worse for longer. And so I'm a little more proactive about it. And Desiree does yoga almost every day. So
this is a question from way before. Philip Lutolf asks, how much sailing experience did you guys have before you started sailing the world?
How much sailing experience do we have? I'm trying to think. Like, I had sailed on small boats a lot. I was a sailing instructor in San Diego for a summer. But even that, like, I had learned in college. So it was one of those things where, like, I learned in college, and then, like, 2 years later, I became an instructor, kind of as, like, a very large step for me. And then as an instructor, I learned a lot. And then I had also done a couple of trips where me and some friends rented bare-boated boats out of Los Angeles. What's that? Marina del Rey. and went from there to Catalina Island, and we did that maybe 4 times. So that was like my first and only cruising experiences until we bought Atticus. So for me, I knew how to sail. I didn't know how to like cruise or necessarily work on a boat. And then Desiree had never sailed before we met.
Nope.
Atticus was the first sailboat she ever stepped foot on, in fact. So she's like a Atticus and Desiree are like high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
You know,
So cute.
first and last time.
Good Atticus. Let's see. SV Spirit Libre says, Jordan, does your dad have experience with wood veneer? I just picked up another sailboat. Awesome. A 1979 Vindo 50. The 50 is for sail area. It is a catch and has a lot of mahogany. Mahogany.
Chris Burgess says, what a cheesy, stupid shirt, Jordan. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Great. Yeah. And this is a comment from one of our patrons, Warren Mengen. He said, I was thinking you could change to sloop when you re-rig and get some space in the cockpit and room for solar panels on back. You could even leave the mast in the same location and go with a larger full roach main to adjust center of effort. But maybe too much to do and not enough time. What do you think?
Can you say that again? I missed it.
Sure. I was thinking you could change to a sloop when you re-rig and get some space in on the cockpit and room for solar panels on the back. You could even leave the mast in the same location and go with a larger full roach main to adjust the center of effort. Maybe too much and not enough time. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm down. My issue is that when you look at any boat where they I shouldn't say any, but in general, boats where they design both a sloop version and a ketch version, the ketch version almost always has more sail area, and Atticus needs that sail area. And so you could go with like a taller rig, and then like you're suggesting, you could go with the Roach, but even with the Roach, I don't think you would make up what the mizzen makes. Especially because if you had you'd have to have a really large Roach, at which point the backstay would be a big problem, right? I've never experienced a large roached mainsail on anything but a catamaran, that didn't have a conventional backstay. So my point is that I like the idea. I'm super down for it, except that Atticus is heavy enough where she really needs all the sail area she can get. She's got a sail area to displacement ratio of like 15.6 or 7, something like that. And so if you were to make it a sloop, it'd probably get down to like 15, and that's real low. You know what I mean? So yeah, and I mean you can attest this, right? Like if we're on a reach, like as long as we're on a reach, like we've got enough sail to get moving in almost anything, because of that mizzen.
Yeah. And then Don Austin on Facebook says, my wife and I love your videos. I have a question for you guys. I apologize if you've addressed this before and I just missed it. Given that the majority of sailing YouTubers from the United States sail to the Bahamas and then to the Caribbean, what were your reasons for choosing to sail to Cuba and Central America? For newbie cruisers, given the choice, what would you tell them to assist in their decision? That was a great question.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, yeah. Some of you guys might know that Jordan and I met working on super yachts, and a really popular route for super yachts is to go to the Bahamas and then go to the Eastern Caribbean. And we were both kind of more excited to check out a place that wasn't as touristy, yeah. And also I was really excited to go to a place where English wasn't spoken as a first language. So mission accomplished. Now I am Spanished out. I told Jordan it's like performing math equations all day. And then also trying to be charming in another language is difficult. And so, yeah, and then Jordan did research about the Yucatan, all the temples. He's a history buff. If you've seen those videos about the ruins, you'll see that.
Yeah, I mean, and especially, I had a sense of what the Western Caribbean would be like, but now that we've done it, like, it's just gonna blow up, I'm sure. Like, it's got to, because there's so much going for it. You've got, like cenotes and the Mayan ruins in the Yucatan. Then you've got the barrier reef of Belize, right, which is just like some of the best cruising anywhere. And then you've got the Rio, which is really cool for like its own reasons. And then you've got the Bay Islands off Honduras, which are like some of the coolest islands ever. And so that kind of circuit, not to mention that if you're a seasonal cruiser, a lot of people just leave their boats in the Rio during hurricane season. Maybe they fly back home, maybe they have jobs that they still work, maybe they go up into the mountains in Guatemala because it's not hot there, and spend summer there, and then come back and then get their boat out and then go cruise Belize, cruise the Bay Islands, cruise Mexico. Next hurricane season, come back. So it's definitely, the Western Caribbean has got a lot going for it. And our experience in the Eastern Caribbean is that it's very, very, very touristy. Very touristy. And so if you are interested in like beach bars, right? Like beach bars are better in the Eastern Caribbean. Like if that's what you're looking for, the Western Caribbean isn't as good for that kind of social scene, I guess you would say.
Well, the Bay Islands were pretty Jimmy Buffety.
But compared to the Eastern Caribbean,
you're right.
you know.
Yeah.
But if you want something that's a little more, you know, on the remote side, a little more cultural, because that's the thing, right? Like there's thriving cultures in Central America, where the Eastern Caribbean, like the people that weren't murdered by Christopher Columbus, you know, and then like, you know, you had a lot of people imported from Africa, but even like a lot of them aren't around in the Eastern Caribbean much anymore. And today most of the locals are not really taking part in a lot of those economies, right? Because you've got, you know, young, attractive, like Dutch college students working at a bar for a summer, you know, for wealthy tourists that are flying in. Like there's not so much room for locals in those economies. So all I'm trying to say is, whereas Central America, like they've got their problems, but they are functioning economies, you know.
And then my mother's from Honduras, so it's always been like this like dream that I've had to bring our sailboat to a country that I've been visiting since I was a little baby. So that was pretty cool. Wayne McFederico says, how much food do you eat each day? Do you ration it when getting low?
This much.
And I would say we eat very well on Atticus. It's something that, because we don't eat out at restaurants very often, I make sure that our groceries are always stocked up and nice and fresh. That being said, when we are remote sailing, it's not that we're rationing food. We pretty much never ration food. It's just that we're switching from fresh goods to like a lot more rice and beans. So our last couple weeks in Cuba, pretty much every meal we would do rice and beans and then fish, or rice and beans and then lobster. So, but yeah, we always have enough food.
Yeah. So real quick, well, yeah, and I will say, I think that we kind of made the choice a little while ago that we would never skimp too much on like groceries, because we know some cruisers that literally won't buy like nice food at the grocery store, let alone eat out or anything else. But we it's not that we don't, like we don't like bring the budget down in the grocery department, right?
I mean,
like we have nice food just about whenever we can.
Right. I'm still a bargain shopper. Like I take Jordan shopping, and he's got a lot to learn.
Yeah. Languages and shopping. Two areas that I am not good.
Yeah, he went to the gourmet cheese section and was like, this is the best cheese I could find.
I got some
it was
cheese,
$20.
bud.
And I was like, let's go find the like crappy cheese section. It has to exist.
Yeah. So here's a good question that I think we both, you know, think a lot about.
Yeah.
Boost Brothers says, how difficult is it to make friends when you sail? And do you want to go for that, or
I can start off.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say I've become a huge introvert living on Atticus, because I think that's always been my inherent tendency. And because of that, sometimes I actually struggle with the cruising culture, because it is super social. So it is very easy to meet other cruisers, and you know, basically most anchorages we go to, it's not uncommon for your neighbors to just come up to you in a dinghy and like chat a little bit, and then if you're vibing well, then usually somebody will throw out the invite for dinner. And then basically you just, if you're invited over for dinner, I always offer to bring drinks for ourselves at the very least. If I really like them, I'll bring them a bottle of wine. And then I always bring a side dish, or like bread or cheese or something like that. So yeah, it's very easy to meet people in the cruising world, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would you say to add to that?
Yeah, so meeting people, there's tons of people that you can meet for sure. And we've met a lot of really cool people. I'd say the hard part is leaving them all the time. Saying goodbye. Like, it's just become such a constant thing for us. And like, you could sugarcoat it and say like, well, it's just a part of the whole thing. And we do. But like, it is a tough aspect of the lifestyle, no doubt about it. Just constantly saying goodbye to people. We just, in Cuba, we cruised for about a month, the full month, just about, with our friends on SV Wavelength. And you'll meet them in the episodes, and like, just super cool people. For us, I think it's a particular issue because like right now, we're in editing mode, and so we're just working. And there's not a lot of people that are working, like, there's people that work and cruise. There's not a lot of people that work while they cruise, right? Like, they're not literally working on their boat in some remote destination. And so for us, like, there's a handful of locations that we've been where we hardly met anybody because we've really had our heads down. And it's not like if you meet somebody in your hometown, right? Like, where they've got their 9 to 5, so to speak, you've got your thing. You can both like respect that and say, well, how about we get together on Friday? Like, cruisers are like, let's get together now. What are you doing? And you're like, well, I'm working, actually, So that's kind of a difficult thing for us. But in general, cruising is very, very easy to meet people. And if you are kind of cruising a traditional route, you'll end up meeting people that are going the exact same places as you. And so you'll end up going large swaths of territory, with the same people.
Yep. Ironically, you end up seeing the same faces over and over again. It's when you like transition from one region to the other, a lot of times that you have to say your big goodbyes, and then you meet your new group of friends for the next couple of months. Mark Harrelson says, hi from Dripping Springs, Texas. Did y'all get any vaccinations before you set off? And I don't think we did, actually. Yeah.
No, we didn't get any vaccinations.
Yeah, we were just going to, the Western Caribbean, so I think we looked up things to special vaccinations, and the only thing that we found was like malaria pills, which we could have gotten, but we didn't do anything essentially.
And as far as I know, nowhere that we're going have like huge vaccination requirements.
Right.
But I guess we've been playing that a little fast and loose just because it is the Caribbean.
Right. If we have cruising guides and we do research as we go to new countries, so if we get to a country where they're like, okay, you should get vaccinated for this, then we would try to figure out how to do that in the location that we're at before going to that country. But that hasn't come up yet. Matt Ranzel says, I'm still catching up on old episodes and have a question about season 2. When making the difficult passage from Mexico to Belize, could you have stopped along the way to make it more manageable?
We could have. Let's see. We had the option to stop in either Bahia de Ascension or Bahia Espiritu Santo. Yeah. And we also could have stopped in Cozumel if we wanted. The problem about stopping in Cozumel is you've got to cross the current. So you lose a lot of ground doing that. So that's not the best thing to do because we were inside the current, right, or west of the current, and you'd have to go over. But both of those big bays, we could have stopped in them. The problem with doing that is it was pretty windy when we did that trip, and the points off of those two bays, if you check out like Google Earth, you'll see that in between the two bays, there's quite a big headland. And then I believe there's a headland to the south of Espiritu Santo. And both those headlands get kind of weird current going in there. And so you can get, when you get winds hitting that weird current off those points, you get some really nasty seas. And I have been told from multiple people that those 2 points were some of the worst seas that people have ever seen. And again, it's because you've got that north setting current, but if you've got a headland, that current will do this, right? And then you've got wind coming from the east, and it's just like, it gets super weird and super nasty. And it's not so shallow, or it's not so deep there. It's relatively shallow, so you get kind of, the seas are getting pushed up a little. So we didn't want to go in there just to get a night's rest, because it would really entail kind of getting into a worse situation.
And also, technically, once you checked it, the port captain told us once we checked out of Isla Mujeres, we weren't legally allowed to drop the hook anywhere in Mexico.
Yeah. I'm not sure that that's what stopped us, though.
Yeah, we were like, let's just not even risk it.
Yeah, I think we had multiple reasons that we wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think on top of that, were we pressed by the weather? Was it going to get worse? Yeah, I think it was mostly that I didn't want to duck into those bays, because when we went past those bays, I think we were more than 5 miles off the coast. I think we were pressing even further off. So yeah, that was the main reason. And then south of those bays, you can stop in Chinchorro Bank, but that's Mexican territory as well. And I've been told that there's an actual, there's officials out there, like some kind of Mexican Coast Guard. And it's not a very protected spot. And when we were sailing by the Chinchorro Bank, it was nighttime. So, long story short, there aren't many places to stop. There aren't many good places to stop. And most of the places that you could stop are not great in heavy weather. So what I would recommend for that passage is wait for lighter winds.
Yeah, that was the big lesson we learned to make it easier. Stacy DePaolo asks, do you keep in touch with Uma and other YouTube cruisers? And yeah, basically every YouTube channel we've met, we've kept in touch with. We always have a lot to talk about and connect with other YouTubers. But yeah, we're really good friends with Uma. We check in with them, I don't know, like once a month or so.
Yeah, in fact, we've got them coming up in an episode where we ask their opinion about doing work in both the Rio and in the States.
And then we've also met Trio Travels, and they're just an incredible family. Who else have we met?
Zingaro.
Man, James is like the coolest guy ever, and Kimmy's awesome as well. And then I don't know any other. Have we met any other ones?
We haven't met any other in person.
But we've collaborated with a couple of sailing channels before in the past. MJ Sailing, White Spot Pirates,
and something that's kind of exciting. If any of you guys are planning on being at the
Annapolis Sailboat Show,
Annapolis Boat Show, we're gonna be as long as we can make it. We're gonna be taking part in a seminar with Lynn Party, talking about basically working while you cruise, like ways to work while you cruise. And so she's going to be going over several different, ways of making money, particularly writing, and we'll be talking about YouTubing. Yep, so that'll be really fun.
Yeah, and then I've heard that La Vagabond is going to be there, and Sailing Yacht Ruby Rose, I think that it was them, so we might meet up with them too. This is a really cool question. How does the budgeting impact the social aspect of cruising? And I would say I don't think it, I don't think being on a budget has negatively affected any of our friendships. Most cruisers are very empathetic to us being on a budget.
Wait, what was the question exactly?
Alan McFarland says, Matt Ransel was asking, how does budgeting impact the social aspect?
I see.
Making friends and stuff.
Yeah, I think that if our goal was to meet more people than we do, going and hanging out at bars would be helpful. But to be honest, cruisers hang out at the cheap bars, like the really cheap bars. You know what I mean? You're not going to see cruisers at the bars with $8 margaritas, and so in Roatan, the bar that everyone would hang out at in French Harbor was the Fantasy Island Marina common area, and the harbor master, he was Rudy Rudy would literally just leave the refrigerator open. So to get a beer, you would go behind the bar to the refrigerator, open it, grab a beer, and then write it down on his little sheet of paper that he had. And it was like, I don't know, $1.50 a beer or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I mean to say by that is from having the cash to engage in social activities. Mm-hmm. Cruisers are all notoriously on tight budgets, and the ones that aren't play the game with the ones that are. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're the exception anyway.
And if they really want to go to a nice restaurant, sometimes they'll offer us to buy dinner, or we'll just eat beforehand and then join them for a drink.
Yeah. But yeah, the vast majority of cruiser interactions are really just having drinks on each other's boats, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of going over to, mostly us going to other people's boats. Yeah. And then Dave says, is there a date for when you were at the boat show? It's sometime in October. I'll have to post the details coming up soon. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And also, we should probably wrap things up, but speaking of the seminar that we're doing with Lynn Party, we're thinking about having a live stream next week, kind of talking about the ins and outs of actually vlogging. So any questions you have about our editing software and the amount of hours we spent on editing and tips on how to, I don't know, trick YouTube. No, we don't know how to. YouTube is a complete mystery. Then join us next week.
Yeah, and then Shane Hickman. I see your comments, Shane. Thanks for asking so many great questions. Has quite a few questions regarding his goals of buying a boat and specific questions on that. And for you, Shane, and for anybody that has a lot of questions that you'd like to ask us, that's actually something that we do for our patrons. So if you become a patron, you get to join our patron-only Facebook group, and through that group, we answer any question, right? So once you become a patron, you have full access to the brains of Desiree and I.
And good looks.
We're happy to answer your guys' questions generally, but when it comes to committing time to answering questions in detail, that's something that we do for our patrons. And so
and when we have time, we try to answer questions on live streams and in emails and stuff, but there just really aren't enough hours in the day to answer every question. So if you want your question bumped up to our priority list, consider becoming a patron.
And specifically with boat buying process or cruising advice, all kinds of stuff like that, definitely check that out.
Yeah, and actually my system is freezing, but so it looks like we missed a couple of super chats.
Okay,
so
I'm on it.
One dumb marine says, when there is a good aft wind to be had, how many knots increase in speed do you get when Desiree's ears are topside versus when she's in berth? My dad did used to call me Dumbo. And I was really sensitive about it.
I'd say a quarter of a knot, probably. It depends if she's laying down or standing up.
Yeah, I used to, when I was in high school, I'd wear my hair so that it would pin back my ears like this. But I've just kind of not cared about it growing up.
Yeah, and we got Shane Hickman before that.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't. Mine stops.
How far back did we go? Sorry, guys.
Mine only goes up to one dumb marine. I don't know why.
Yeah, Shane Hickman.
Sailing SV Someday says, get out and buy yourself some really nice guacamole. Oh, that sounds good. Thank you, Darla and Steve. How are you guys doing with your boat projects? Judge Dredd says, buy a 12-pack of beer. That would be awesome. Thank you.
All right. Rock on, Judge Dredd. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. Hopefully we got to a lot of your questions. If we didn't, we're really sorry. It's hard for us to kind of manage all the questions, but keep on asking them. Try to join us next week and keep on asking. And, we had a really good time with you tonight, and hopefully we'll see you next week. If you guys are... if you never want to miss another live stream, you can text the word Atticus to the number 43506. And that way you'll get text notifications the day of every live stream. So you'll never miss another live stream, and that's totally free for you. And I can't think of anything else except thank you guys for your love and support, and we love having you on this journey with us.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Dave. You're like amazing. Dave's been feeding me questions and messages that I missed. So Dave, you're always amazing, and we really love you. And I can't wait to make it over to your part of the world, over in Ireland, and hang out and share some boatyard stories.
Yeah. So everybody, thank Dave real quick, because
thank you, Dave.
he really he does so much to help us make this thing happen.
What time is it over there in Ireland right now, Dave?
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, and be sure to check out this week's episode. It's us preparing to leave for Cuba. So we're not too far behind right now, which is kind of fun.
Catching up.
Yeah, and you'll get to watch us struggle over a 3-day period as we scramble and almost pass out from exhaustion trying to get Atticus ready for Cuba. So, okay, guys, we'll see you guys on Thursday.
See you next week.
Bye.